Welcome to How to Become a Production SQL Database Administrator. My name is Raphael. So in the previous video, I asked you to download the various applications that we need. And those applications were the VirtualBox, the Virtual Extension, the SQL 2014, the Operating System 2012, and then the Database AdventureWorks 2014. So now that we've downloaded it, what we're going to do now is actually install the VirtualBox application so we can create a self-contained operating system. And once I go through the process, you'll see the idea of a self-contained virtualization. Now, virtualization obviously is used in the production environment. They certainly don't use VirtualBox, they use VMware software, but this is a great free utility to give you an idea of what virtualization does. So to begin, double-click VirtualBox, and let's start the installation of this application. And go Next. Go Next. We're going to basically accept all the defaults. You're going to get a warning, and that's fine. So go Next, and then Install. And what's going to happen now, we're going to install the VirtualBox 5.1.8 version, which I believe is the latest version of this virtualization. Virtualization has been in the market for a relatively long time. Go Yes. And it's a great product that most companies use, even from small, mid-sized to large companies. And basically, it's a process where you have one or two physical servers, and on those physical servers, you have what's called virtualization software, which allows you to create self-contained operating systems. And this is what I use in the production environment in my company. And this is what the idea is behind virtualization. So let's uncheck that and go Finish. As soon as you've done that, you'll see we get an icon for Oracle VirtualBox right here. So double click it, and then the application will open. And as you can see, this is the interface for the manager that you're going to get. You'll notice on the left-hand side that I've already got a virtual machine created that I did for testing, which is called DC. However, you will not see this, so yours will be blank, just like this is here. So what we're going to do now is create a virtual machine. So the first thing we want to do in creating a virtual machine is go to the left up here and go New. This virtual machine operating system will be pop up. And what we need to do is decide what type of a operating system we need to install. In our case, we are installing Microsoft Windows, but if you look at the drop down, you'll see that you can install Linux, Solaris, even Mac and other operating systems here. So for our demonstration, we're going to select Microsoft Windows. Here it allows you to select the version, and our version of Windows is a 64-bit 2012, so make sure you select the appropriate one. And here we're going to call something. We're just going to call it Windows OS. You can call it whatever you wish. So we'll just call it Windows OS. And I'm typing with one letter, one finger. So, oops, Windows. Oh, no, what happened? Okay, now it's not doing. Let's just call it Windows. That's good enough. And there we go. It's a little slow, I guess. And go Next. Here it's going to ask you how much memory to allocate. Is given by default almost 2 gigs. Now take in consideration that this memory is taken away from your host server. So whatever memory you have, 2 gigs is going to be allocated to this virtual machine. Generally this is fine, so go Next. Now we're going to create the hard disk, and you have choices here. Let's just go with the default for the time being, and we can adjust the size, which is the default 25 gigs. And go Create. Again, this is going to be allocated from your physical hard drive that you have in your host system. You have 3 options. Let's just go with the default and go Next. And here you have the options of dynamically allocating or fixed. I'm going to select the fixed size and go Next. And here I want to change this 25 to 35 gigs. And this will be taken from your physical hard drive also. So let's go Create. The larger the size you create, the longer it takes to create the virtual machine that we're going to do. So what I'm going to do right now is click Create, and it will start the process. Now, this is going to take about 5-6 minutes. So what I'm going to do is pause the video. And then when this is complete, we'll have a virtual machine here. And then we'll go over some of these options that we can for each of the virtual machines we create. So right now I'm going to pause this video while this is occurring, and we'll come back and pick it up from there. So I'll see you in a second. And we're back, and as you can see, when the virtual machine has been created, this is the interface you're going to get. And as you can see on the left-hand side, the virtual machine Windows OS has been created. And at the state right now, it's powered off. The first thing we need to do now is power it on. So in this particular case, what I'm going to do is just go up here and make sure you select obviously if you have more than one virtual machine, make sure you select the appropriate one. But for our demonstration purposes, we're only going to necessarily have one. So here in this case, let me minimize that. Go Start. A window will pop up now and asking to install the operating system, which I'm going to do here. So this is how easy it was just to install or create a virtual machine and allocate both the memory and physical space. This next window will pop up and it's going to ask you to direct yourself to the folder where we downloaded the operating system. In this particular case, I'm going to click on this folder, left click, and a window will pop up asking for the directory where there is. And here it is. As you can see, it's in the particular application that we've been talking about. So I'm going to left click this and go OK or open. Now yours may be different, so make sure you find the appropriate server, but this is our data center, 64-bit, and go Start. And this will take a few minutes. As you can see, let's close this. We can expand this, so let's expand it here. And now what's going to happen is we're going to talk about the installation of the operating system 2012. Now, it's not likely that as a DBA, you're going to be going into a company and installing the Windows server. However, it's always important to know how to do it, just in case they ask you to create a virtual machine or you need a virtual machine for a test environment, and you can create and deploy the operating system yourself. So this is the window that pops up, and it's a default page. So just go Next and click on Install Now. And this will start up. The installation of our operating system has become relatively simple to do nowadays. It really has become easier and easier with only a few clicks away. So we're going to be looking at this, how to install this, and there will be a time when we need to let it run for a few minutes, and I'll pause the video. In this particular example, I want you to select we can use the standard version or the database version. It doesn't really matter for our purposes. We can choose the data center. Make sure you choose server with GUI, because this will allow us to select the GUI interface and go Next. And then accept the terms and go Next. Select Custom Install. Now it's going to ask you where do you want to install the Windows. We're going to install it in the 35 gigs that we allocated. So go Next. And now it's going to start downloading Windows operating system. Now this will take about 10 to 15 minutes. It's not really that long. And then when it comes back up, it's going to look at the window for the administrator password. So I'm going to pause the video right now. And again, when this is complete, I'll pick it up. So this is how easy it is to install the operating system. And one thing to note is let me just minimize this. One thing to note is this is what I've been talking about in creation of a virtual machine. You'll notice that the background here is my desktop, and it's my Windows 10 operating system. And here is a self-contained virtual machine using the VirtualBox application. And we're about to install Windows Operating System 2012. And this is a self-contained system. It will not affect this and vice versa. We can delete this entire virtual machine and the operating system and all the applications on it, and it will not affect the background or the host, and vice versa. Anything we do here will not affect this. So this is a great way of learning a different operating system and testing operating systems if you need to using the VirtualBox application. So as I said, so this is the reason I'm installing this, because for our purposes when understanding SQL 2014 administration, we do need a Windows operating system, and I don't want to install the operating system on your desk and overwrite it. So this is why we're going through this process of creating a virtualization, adding the operating system, and then working with in this virtual machine to do our learning of SQL. So this is going to go on for a few more minutes. So what I'm going to do right now is pause the video. And again, when this comes back, I'll pick it up and we'll continue from there. So I'm going to see you in a second. And we're back, and let me minimize this. As you can see, when the virtual machine operating system install completes, this is the next window that you're going to ask, which is asking for the administrator username password. In this particular case, make sure you use what's called a complex password. And a complex password consists of upper letters, lower cases, numbers, and some kind of a sign, either a dash or a pound sign, and so on. It's important we do that right now because when we promote this particular operating system to what's called a domain controller and we're adding the administrator password, it's going to make sure that the complexity of the password is appropriate. If it's not, you'll get an error. So it's better to do it now than later. So make sure you add a password again, and I'm going to call it uppercase P, ASSWORD, underscore pound sign 123. So that's mine. So you should use something similar or whatever. So password under pound sign 123 and go next and finish. And make sure you remember that password, because if you forget it, then you're going to have to uninstall this entire VM and start from scratch. So it's important to understand that password when we log back on, which we're going to do in a few minutes. Here you can see we can expand the entire virtual machine to take over the desk if you want. And here you'll see a few things here that we'll go over in a second. The other thing to note is that if I click on there, we're looking at the manager. These are some of the properties of the VM that we're going to look at. We'll look at the general, the system, the display, and so on in another video when I'll go over this in a little more detail, because this is going to be important to navigate the properties of this virtual machine. So right now we've installed it. It's asking to press Alt-Delete. So go to Input, Key, and Insert, and then now add the password that we just spoke of. So it's capital P ASS word 123. So, and go next. And so now we've installed the operating system Windows 2012. There's a few things we're going to have to do in terms of configuring this, and I'll show you this in a second. So I'll let this come up and we can just kill this. One thing you'll note right now is that every time Windows Server 2012 starts, the Server Manager window is going to pop up as it does right there. And this is by default. And what we need to do is to switch this off, and I'll show you how to do that so the Server Manager window doesn't keep popping up. So let this Server Manager start. That's where we can change it. And if you'll notice, this is the environment. You'll see this scroll bar here scrolling. So it's still booting up, if you will, and setting the properties. But once that completes, what you need to do is go to Manage, left-click Manage, and you'll see a drop-down list in a second as soon as this finish. Let's try it again. And everything here should be green. So there are some services that won't start by default, and that's okay. So let's try one more time and go Server Manager Properties. And you'll see Do Not Start Manager Automatically Log On. So check that and go OK. So now that's done, we can close this. If you need to go back to the Server Manager, this is the icon right here. Just left click it and it will start. So we will need to go to this to promote it, and we'll be doing that in the later videos. So now that we have the operating system Windows 2012 server on, you can see that it's connected to the internet, and we can access the internet. Here are a few things here, file, and we'll go over these in a few seconds. The other thing that we do need to do is let's look at our to-do list. So create a virtual machine, we did, and now we've installed the downloaded. Now we know to install the extensions. So go back to your virtual machine, and up here in Devices, go Insert Guest Edition CD, and do that. A little window will pop up. Tap on it, and go run. Now this is important, so make sure you do this and go next, install, and that's fine. Windows is going to be popping up, and we want to say always trust, because there are several windows that are going to pop up that we need to do. So rather than doing it one at a time, just check this and go install. And this will just take a few minutes, then it's going to reboot the virtual environment. And one thing to note is, let me minimize this, is again, look at the wonderful thing that we're doing. We're creating a separate virtual machine with an operating system that's independent of the host. So this is a great way to test these things. And this is how the real world works, actually, using a different application. They don't use VirtualBox, of course. In a production, we have VMware. So click Finish. This will reboot the virtual machine and the operating system within the virtual machine here. And that's it. We're pretty much good. We're good to go, where we're going to install the operating system, and that's it. So let that boot up. So at this point, we've done this. We've shown you what a VirtualBox is. We've created a virtual machine. We've downloaded the extensions and the tools. We've installed the operating system. And we're going to do a few properties here in a second. And I'll show you that in a second. So let's expand this. And go back to Input, Keys. And let's add the password. Make sure you remember the password, very important. And there we go. And a couple of things now you can look at. Obviously, we can go up here and go to View. We can go full screen mode. And this window will pop up and go Switch. And there it is. Now, as you can see, if I scroll up here with the mouse, I can't see anything here. However, at the bottom, if I hover over, you'll see this little tab pops up. And this is where we can go View and so on. So let's go View. And we can go back to whatever we want in this case. And this particular tab here is my tab. So let's go, as you can see. So this is my desktop, and this is the virtual environment. So at this point, we've created a virtual machine. We've installed the operating system, and we're good to go. What we need to do now is, let's look at the next to-do list, is we need to promote this Windows environment, the Windows 2012, to what's called a domain controller. And the distinction between this server, which is called a standalone server, or all servers in the environment are what's called standalone, meaning there's just a self-contained operating system with a Windows server. When we talk about domain controllers, what we're doing is we're taking one particular operating system and we're promoting it to call it domain controller. And that one is a central hub to managing the security of all the other servers and workstations within that hub. And I'll be showing you that in a second when we promote this. So I think I'm going to leave it here, and we'll continue with the next one, where we're actually going to take this and, as I said, promote it to a Windows domain server, and then we'll start continuing creating a domain. So I think I'll leave it here, and that's more than enough at this point. But take the wonderful technology, which is relatively old, believe it or not, this technology is not relatively new, of virtualization. And I certainly use it in my environment, and you will be certainly using it in yours. So it's a good understanding, it's a good to understand what virtualization is and be exposed to it, even in this free level. The principles are the same, but you'll be using VMsphere most likely, or whatever other applications there are that you use in the production environment. But the principle, as I said, is exactly the same, where you're creating virtual machines, putting operating systems on it, putting SQL servers on it, and then joining those into a domain. So we'll do that here. So I'll leave it here, and we'll continue with the next one, where we're going to actually install SQL. We're going to actually promote this to a Windows domain, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'll leave it here, and we'll continue with the next one. So my name is Raphael, and this is how to become a production SQL database administrator. See you in the next video.